Has NASCAR's Throwback Weekend lost its luster? Has it run its course? I can see why some might say that. After all, it's been running since 2015, 2025 being the 11th straight year Darlington has held a throwback race. And drivers, fans, everybody in the industry is giving their takes on this. And a lot of people have said, yeah, it was fun while it started and while it lasted, but we're kind of getting overboard here. And I wanted to look more into that because I think that there's an interesting conversation to have about this. And while I might not agree with what people say, I do think the points they bring up are somewhat better than people would like to give them credit for. Let's start with those who are currently against Throwback Weekend continuing on into the future long term. Three people really took the spotlight with this, those being three of the young stars of our sport: Chase Elliott, William Byron, and Bubba Wallace. Chase Elliott had pretty much said that we beat the horse to death back in 2018, and that he doesn't like the fact that in a couple years they might run a throwback back to him, or he might run a paint scheme that he ran at the start of his career. And then you have William Byron, who says that it's really repetitive and that you've kind of just run the same things over and over again. And then there's Bubba Wallace, who says that it's still run its course, but it doesn't need to leave. It's just they won't participate in it anymore. And with all three of them, I think that some points are brought up. I think that the creativity part of it is definitely lacking nowadays. And that's not because of the designers, in my opinion. I think it's more because of the sponsors, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. I think that the creativity, for instance, on the 24, you're always going to have a Jeff Gordon throwback. And when you don't, people are going to ask, why isn't it the Flames 24? Why isn't it the Rainbow Warriors? Why isn't it Jeff Gordon? Why is it Joe Schmo from another motorsport series? Why is it so-and-so who never won a race in the 24? Chase Elliott, on the other end, I can get maybe thinking it's repetitive, or maybe having every single year of his career, a Darlington race has to be a throwback. And if not, people will be upset. Now, I also think that he's probably not too crazy about it because the throwback that he had this year, it was dog crap. And then on Bubba Wallace's part, I get that. Teams don't need to participate. On the other end of that, though, that could be how this weekend dies in a sense, because instead of teams feeling like they need to show up, slowly apathy kind of gets put in place. I think all three of these drivers are wrong, though. And I think that all three of them can really be seen as alike in one particular way. This is still a younger crop of drivers. And I think that maybe if they don't even think about it or realize, they might not appreciate this as much as somebody who's, say, an older driver, somebody who's seen more of the sport long term from the Cup POV. Now, I do think that this is not a coincidence, though, that these three drivers are out there as well. I think in a lot of ways, it's also because it's sponsor driven. And they talked about this a little bit on the teardown with Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi. And they definitely talked a lot more from the perspective of the sponsors, which I get. You have not as many full season sponsors that can give up a race. A lot of them are there for 4 or 5 races, some of them there for their one race, and they don't want to throw back to another brand's colors, design, or so be it. And I can get that. This is the podcast party bus. For those of you who are new on the channel, I, along with a lot of other YouTubers, was on a car at Darlington back in 2023. And as you can look at it, this is not a throwback paint scheme. It is our own unique scheme that we had. And it was awesome. It was a great experience. We had one shot at it, and it wasn't originally actually supposed to be at Darlington, but we had the opportunity to go back to a throwback. And ultimately, we chose to have our own unique scheme because, in our thoughts and our words, we only had one shot at this ever. One shot to be on a NASCAR Cup Series car, one shot to have our picture in the history books of NASCAR on track. And so we chose our own scheme, and we got a little flack for it, and I get that. At the same time, though, if it had been a throwback, say, to Jamie McMurray, if it were in the purple, yeah, we would probably get a lot more airtime, but we'd be throwing it back to somebody else. We'd be talking about somebody else. And in that respect, we would be overshadowed in our own moment. I don't think it's neither right nor wrong. It's just the direction we went with it. And I think that's what sponsors are looking at with this. Now, on the other end of all of this, you do have Kyle Busch really just said fans love it. And it's not for us, it's for them in the grandstands and especially on TV as well. It is for us fans. We get to see these every year. And while drivers might not have that connection to it, we do. And having that little tether back and forth is fun. And it's not like we're the only sport that does it. Most stick and ball sports have throwback different jerseys, helmets, you name it. I know my Minnesota Vikings, they did throwbacks when they were honoring Bud Grant after his passing. So this is not something uniquely NASCAR, and it's not something to say the past was better. But on the other end of it, Joey Logano also brings up a good point. This is not meant to be something where we look cool. This is something that we're paying homage to the past. And in that way, we're not exactly supposed to be, drivers at least, the stars of this. The schemes are, and the schemes are what we see. And, I give them credit for this. I give them respect. And both these drivers have been around since the 2000s. They've seen the way the sport has changed. They've seen the way that this really gets a pop with the fans that a lot of these other younger guys, I just don't think do. I think that in a lot of ways, a lot of these younger guys really are just focused on the racing side of it, not the fan side of it, where Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, for instance, who ran a really good throwback and won the race. Well, they are guys who were there in the mid 2000s, in the early 2000s, depending on the series. And they're the ones I think that have that full scope and have seen how big that was at the time in 2015 when it happened. Now, there's somebody else I want to highlight in this. NASCAR Man on Twitter left a really great thread. So you have NASCAR Man here who says NASCAR's Throwback Weekend is one of the greatest marketing ideas of the last 10 years. And we can't forget that this benefits so many stakeholders in NASCAR, the teams, sponsors, the tracks, former drivers, and fans. He then goes forward to say, Throwback Weekend sees tremendous rises in social media engagement, higher than most all other race weekends. Darlington saw a revival in interest in the Throwback Weekend, increased ticket sales, double-digit growth in corporate sales, and merchandise sales increased. I mean, now we've seen Darlington after the pandemic has permanently, for the most part, had a second date added on. So I think this is something really big too. And since then, we've moved from the Southern 500 to this date being the Throwback Weekend. So both can be special weekends. He says, if you're 28th in points, try getting meaningful publicity for your team. But yet, Kyle Sieg has gotten great attention because of his car. Sponsors are getting attention. Teams otherwise overlooked are being seen. This post was the most liked post for RSS Racing in the last 5 years, that being his Night Owl scheme that he had, which was one of the best. And that car got way more airtime than the 28 car ever would in any other weekend. This, in a lot of ways, and NASCAR Man is really pointing this out, benefits these smaller teams. These teams that need the exposure, they need the sponsorship, and at the end, they need Throwback Weekend. He also says Throwback Weekend honoring past drivers and teams is great. This week, we've seen Patty Moyse be honored. Jimmy Spencer's at the shop. John Andretti's family is involved again. Drivers and teams add significance to racing. And once they're gone, this gives a chance to say, we appreciate what you did. We remember you. And that's a big point that I brought up. This weekend is not just something to play cosplay or dress up like Halloween. This is a way also to teach younger fans, younger industry members, younger drivers about the past of the sport, about who came before them, give those stories. It's not like we're overshadowing the championship. It's not like we're even overshadowing the end of the race. This is a way to teach. And I fully agree with this too. And I've noticed, and especially with drivers who've retired that I've been able to interview and talk to, a lot of them basically feel like they just have to go and walk off and never be remembered. And this is a great way to bring them back. And you see, as a sport, as a culture, It's a lot more publicity and a lot more positivity that we don't normally see in NASCAR anymore. Now, he also says it is hard to give significance to a race in the spring. Homestead and Martinsville were not sellouts like they would be in the fall. And to be honest, Homestead wouldn't even be close in the fall, as we've seen, but it was definitely worse this year. The playoff system might provide excitement in the fall, but unless you're winning a spring race or getting playoff points from it, it's practically meaningless to a team once the playoffs start. Whether you finish 6th or 30th doesn't really matter once the points are reset if you don't carry playoff points from it. That is a good point. The races in the regular season, even from those who defend the playoffs, has definitely been seen as lesser than the last 10 races. I mean, they literally say you have to show up when it matters most. That proves that the earlier part of the season really doesn't matter as much, even to those who value this system. So, yes, you do need to make it matter more. You need to make every weekend matter more. And whether that's changing the format or changing different things about those weekends, like NASCAR's chose to do, you have to do that, because if the drivers might not feel as much of an importance early in the season, the fans certainly won't. And with that too, you definitely need to have some kind of way to market. Also saying Throwback Weekend is a way to give added significance to a race that may be unimportant to most of the field in the long run. How do we sell tickets to races that don't carry importance like they used to? By giving an extra layer of fun, of memories. Throwback Weekend helped revive the Southern 500, and now it's doing that to a spring race that didn't exist for decades. True, 100% true. This race did not exist on the NASCAR schedule since 2004 until it came back in, I believe, 2020. You did have the Southern 500 revived with it, and it was a huge, huge moment for the sport. And so I don't think this can go by the wayside. And also bringing up that Throwback Weekend, saying compared to Darlington, Bristol next doesn't have the extra buzz of excitement. Don't forget, they had to cover the track in dirt trying to make their spring race intriguing. It is hard to promote spring races when it's cold. There's no championship at stake. Throwback Weekend gives so much benefit for so many stakeholders. NASCAR is a diverse collection of people and organizations approaching a race from different perspectives. Some stakeholders may not see the benefit from Throwback Weekend, but more do that don't. And I agree. And I think that you can still change things. I like what Raja Karuth brought up here, saying that I think the first Darlington weekend can be a retro weekend. If people feel as though the throwbacks are played out, like old school type schemes, apparel, not necessarily throwing back to a specific scheme, since there is not an infinite amount of them. And again, I, to a degree, agree with this. I do think that there needs to be an added layer. There needs to be more of that, whether it's displays outside the track, even more of them than I saw in 2023, more drivers coming in. There does need to be that celebration, even for those who can't throw back. It's just unfortunate, because to me, this is fun. NASCAR in so many ways has changed for the worse on the fun department. It's true. We're way too serious about the championship compared to even what we were at the start of the Chase era. We have so many arguments on social media, and so many people are nasty to each other back and forth about the sport. I think even myself in particular, I get a little too serious about it and rant. I think this is a good way that we're able to just take a breath as an industry, as a fan base in general, and have a little bit of fun. And NASCAR's fun. This is a fun sport to be a fan of. I think more than just about any other sport. And I would hate to take even more of that away from people who have thoroughly been enjoying it. This spring crowd, I think, is the biggest one I've seen since the spring race came back. And the ratings generally are pretty good for it as well. So I see no reason to take it away. The sponsors, I think, need to get on board. But that's just what I think. That's just what a lot of people on social media and drivers think. I want to know what you think. Do you think that Throwback Weekend's played out? Or do you think that people are being sticks in the mud and need to have a little more fun with it? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like in this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel for more great and fun NASCAR content. Thank you so much, all my channel members, for your continued support. And until next time, have a good one.